Have you ever stood in a room full of people, laughter echoing around you, yet felt completely empty inside? Have you scrolled through your phone, bought things you thought would make you happy, achieved goals you once dreamed of, only to find yourself asking, why does none of this matter anymore? If you're feeling this profound numbness, this strange disconnection from life itself, I want you to know something important. This isn't a flaw in you. This is a wake-up call. And the ancient Taoist masters understood this crisis of joy thousands of years before our modern world made it an epidemic. I remember the exact moment I realized nothing brought me joy anymore. It was a Tuesday morning. I had everything I thought I wanted. A career people envied. A relationship that looked perfect from the outside. Enough money to buy whatever caught my eye. But as I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my coffee, I felt absolutely nothing. Not sadness, not even despair. Just emptiness. A hollow void where excitement used to live. And the terrifying part? I had no idea when it had started. The joy had leaked out of my life so gradually that I hadn't noticed until I was completely dry. What I didn't understand then, but what the Taoist sages knew intimately, is that we lose joy not because life stops offering it, but because we fundamentally misunderstood what joy actually is. We've been taught to chase it, to manufacture it, to demand it from external sources. But joy, according to the Dao De Jing, cannot be grasped. The moment you try to hold water in your fist, it slips through your fingers. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. This is the paradox that the founder of Taoism, Laozi, warned about in the 6th century BCE. He said, "When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you." Think about that for a moment. Nothing lacking. Not more money. Not a better partner. Not a different body or a bigger house. Nothing lacking. How radical is that idea in our modern world? We've built entire economies on the belief that something is always lacking. That happiness lives just beyond the next purchase, the next promotion, the next achievement. We've created what Taoist philosophy calls the disease of having desires. Let me share a story from the Tang dynasty, recorded in the chronicles of the Zen master Linji Yixuan. There was once a wealthy merchant named Chen who traveled hundreds of miles to visit a Taoist hermit living in the mountains. Chen arrived exhausted, his servants carrying gifts of gold, silk, and rare teas. He bowed before the hermit and said, "Master, I have everything a man could want, yet I wake each morning with a stone in my chest. Nothing brings me joy. Please tell me what I must acquire to find happiness again." The hermit looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Put down what you're carrying." Chen was confused. "But master, my servants are carrying the gifts." "I'm not talking about the gifts," the hermit replied. "I'm talking about what you've been carrying for years. Put it down." Chen left that day angry, feeling the master had mocked him. But that night, unable to sleep, he finally understood. He wasn't carrying gifts. He was carrying expectations. He was carrying the weight of maintaining an image. He was carrying the exhausting burden of trying to force life to deliver specific outcomes. He was carrying everything except his own natural state, and that weight had crushed his capacity for joy. This is the first Taoist truth about why nothing brings you joy anymore. You're not missing something. You're carrying too much, and what you're carrying isn't even real. It's the accumulated weight of resistance to what is. In the Dao De Jing, Laozi describes the concept of Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action or non-doing. But Wu Wei doesn't mean lying on your couch waiting for life to happen. It means moving with life rather than against it. It means releasing the exhausting effort of trying to force reality to match your mental picture of how things should be. When a river encounters a rock, it doesn't stop and complain that the rock shouldn't be there. It doesn't lose its joy because the path isn't straight. It simply flows around the obstacle, adapting, moving, remaining utterly itself. You've lost joy because you've been living like that merchant. You've been treating life as a transaction. You do X, and life is supposed to deliver Y. When Y doesn't arrive, or when it arrives and feels hollow, you assume something is broken. Either you're broken, or the world is broken, or your dreams were wrong. But the Taoists would tell you that nothing is broken. You've simply been playing a game that was designed to be unwinnable. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt genuine joy? Really think about it. Go back in your memory. I'm willing to bet that when you find those moments, they have something in common. They weren't the moments you planned. They weren't the achievements you worked toward. They were probably spontaneous moments. A sudden burst of laughter with a friend. The way light looked on water at a specific angle. the unexpected kindness of a stranger, a moment when you forgot to manage your image and just existed. These moments have something the Taoists recognized as essential to joy. They were unforced. You weren't trying to extract happiness from them. You simply were there, open, present, and joy arose naturally, like steam from warm earth after rain. This is the second truth. Joy isn't something you get. It's something that emerges when you stop blocking it. And what blocks it? The endless mental commentary, the constant evaluation, the habit of judging every experience as good or bad, successful or failed, enough or not enough. The Taoist master Zhuangzi told a story about a tree that grew so twisted and gnarled that no carpenter would cut it down. While all the straight, beautiful trees were chopped down for lumber, this useless tree lived for hundreds of years, providing shade and shelter for countless creatures. Its lack of conventional value was its liberation. It had no other purpose than to be exactly what it was, and in that purposelessness, it served everything around it. You've been taught that you need a purpose to have value, that you need to be productive, successful, improving, growing, achieving. But what if the exhausting pursuit of purpose is precisely what's strangling your joy? What if, like that gnarled tree, your deepest satisfaction comes not from being useful in someone else's design, but from being authentically, unapologetically yourself? I want you to try something right now. Stop reading for just 10 seconds. Don't think about what you need to do next. Don't judge this exercise. Just take 3 slow breaths. Notice the sensation of air entering your body. Notice the quality of light around you. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Don't try to feel anything in particular. Just notice. Do this now before continuing. What happened? Did you notice even for those few seconds how the mental chatter quieted? That quiet space is where joy lives. Not in the next achievement, not in the perfect circumstances. Right here, in the texture of this present moment. The Taoists called this returning to your original nature, your Ziren, your spontaneous, unforced authenticity. But here's the challenge our modern world presents. We've built lives that make this almost impossible. We wake to alarm clocks that shock our nervous systems into artificial urgency. We flood our minds with news of crises we cannot solve and comparisons we cannot win. We work jobs that demand we hide our true nature and perform a character. We scroll through carefully curated images of other people's highlight reels and call it connection. We've become like bamboo bent almost to breaking, holding forms that aren't natural to us, and wondering why we feel brittle and joyless. There's a famous teaching story from the Song dynasty about a farmer whose best horse ran away. His neighbors said, "How terrible." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned with 3 wild horses. The neighbors said, "How wonderful." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses and broke his leg. The neighbors said, "How terrible." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next week, military officers came to draft young men for war, but the son was spared because of his injury. The neighbors said, "How wonderful," and the farmer replied, "Maybe." This story illustrates the Taoist principle of not clinging to judgments. The neighbors exhausted themselves on an emotional roller coaster, declaring each event good or bad, wonderful or terrible. The farmer remained centered, recognizing that life is far too complex, too interconnected, to label any single event with certainty. His maybe wasn't indifference, it was profound wisdom. He had joy not because only good things happened to him, but because he refused to armor himself with rigid judgments that separate him from the flowing reality of what is. What if I told you that your lack of joy isn't because bad things have happened to you? It's because you've been fighting reality itself. Every time something happens that doesn't match your mental picture of how it should be, you create suffering. Not because the event itself is inherently painful, but because you add resistance to it. You add the story that it shouldn't be this way. That story is the real source of joylessness. The Dao De Jing states, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. When I let go of what I have, I receive what I need." Think about the profound revolution in those words. We spend our entire lives clinging desperately to our self-image, our possessions, our plans, and that clinging is exhausting. It drains the battery of our life force. There's nothing left for joy because all our energy goes into maintaining control, maintaining the illusion that we're the architects of every outcome. Let me share my own transformation. After that hollow Tuesday morning, I spent months trying to solve my joylessness the way I'd been taught. I changed jobs, I ended the relationship, I traveled, I bought different things. And none of it worked because I was still operating from the same assumption. that joy was somewhere else, somewhere I needed to go, something I needed to get. I was exhausting myself swimming against a current, insisting the river should flow in a different direction. Then I encountered the Taoist concept of Pu, often translated as the uncarved block. It refers to our natural state before society, conditioning, and learned desire shaped us into something else. Before we learned to judge ourselves, before we absorbed the message that we're not enough as we are, before we started performing for approval, that original state, the Taoists teach, contains a natural joy that doesn't depend on circumstances. It's like the joy of a child watching an ant carry a crumb, completely absorbed, not thinking about the past or future, not comparing this moment to any other moment, just utterly here. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done anything without an agenda, without thinking about how it would look, whether it was productive, whether it moved me toward my goals. I'd turned even leisure into a project, even relaxation into something I could fail at. I'd lost the capacity for aimless wandering, for doing something simply because it called to me in that moment. I'd carved myself into a very specific shape, and that shape was too small to contain my actual nature. So I started an experiment. I gave myself permission for 1 hour each day to be completely purposeless. No improving, no producing, no documenting for social media, just being. Some days I sat and watched clouds. Some days I walked with no destination. Some days I lay on the floor and listened to music the way I did when I was 12, when music could take me to another dimension, and something remarkable happened. After about 3 weeks, I started feeling small flickers of something I'd almost forgotten. Not manufactured happiness, not the fake enthusiasm of forced positivity, but genuine moments of quiet gladness at being alive. The Taoists have a teaching about water that changed everything for me. Water, they observe, is the softest substance, yet it can wear away the hardest rock. Water doesn't fight. It yields. It takes the shape of whatever contains it. Yet nothing is more powerful. Laozi wrote, "The softest things in the world overcome the hardest things in the world." We've been taught the opposite. We've been taught that power comes from force, from pushing, from making things happen. But that kind of power is brittle. It breaks under sustained pressure. True strength, Taoist wisdom teaches, comes from flexibility, from yielding, from moving with rather than against. What does this have to do with joy? Everything. When you stop fighting what is, when you stop insisting that this moment should be different, something miraculous happens. The tremendous energy you were using for resistance becomes available for presence. And presence is the doorway to joy. Not presence in some mystical, complicated sense. Just the simple capacity to be here, in this body, in this moment, without the constant mental escape hatch of wishing you were somewhere else. Let me give you a practical framework. The Taoists speak of returning to the Tao, returning to alignment with the natural way of things. This isn't about believing in anything mystical. It's about recognizing patterns. Life has rhythms, seasons, cycles of expansion and contraction, growth and rest, activity and stillness. But we've created a culture that demands constant expansion, perpetual growth, endless productivity. We've declared war on natural cycles. We fight tiredness with caffeine. We fight night with artificial light. We fight aging with products that promise eternal youth. We fight sadness with forced positivity. And all this fighting is exhausting. More than exhausting, it's crushing our capacity for organic joy. Here's what I want you to understand. You cannot force joy any more than you can force a flower to bloom by pulling on its petals. But you can create conditions where joy naturally emerges. Just as a gardener creates conditions for growth, good soil, adequate water, appropriate light, you can create conditions in your life for joy to arise spontaneously. What are these conditions? First, space. You need space in your life that isn't scheduled, managed, or optimized. Space where you're not performing any role. Where you're not the employee, the parent, the partner, the friend with a specific character to maintain. Just space for your original nature to breathe. The Taoists practice sitting and forgetting, which wasn't about forcing your mind blank, but about releasing the grip on identity for a little while, letting yourself be undefined, unknown even to yourself. Second, simplicity. The Dao De Jing repeatedly emphasizes simplicity. In the pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In the practice of the Tao, every day something is dropped. Wu Wei, what can you drop? Not because you should, but because when you really examine it, it's not serving you. Maybe it's a habit of checking your phone first thing in morning, flooding your nervous system with other people's urgencies before you've even remembered who you are. Maybe it's a relationship that requires you to be smaller than you are. Maybe it's an ambition you realize you adopted from someone else's values, not your own. Dropping isn't failure. It's the wisdom of the farmer who prunes the fruit tree so it can bear better fruit. Third, presence with what is. This might be the hardest and most important. We're so conditioned to improve everything, to fix problems, to make things better. But what if some things don't need to be fixed? What if this moment, exactly as it is, with all its imperfection and ordinariness, is actually complete? The Taoists say that the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. This isn't mystical obscurity. It's pointing to something important. Life is always more than our categories can capture. Joy is always more subtle than our demanding mind can grasp. When we stop trying to capture it, define it, demand it, sometimes it just shows up, quietly, in the space we've created by not grasping. Let me share another transformation story, this one from someone I know. Her name is Rachel, and for 15 years she worked in corporate finance. By all external measures, she was successful. 6-figure salary, beautiful apartment. Yet she told me she spent most of those years feeling like she was watching her life through glass. Like she was performing a very convincing character, but her real self was locked somewhere deep inside, unreachable. She'd tried everything to find joy. Therapy, medication, yoga retreats, online courses on happiness. Nothing worked. She thought something was fundamentally wrong with her. Then she encountered the Taoist concept of Te, often translated as virtue or power, but more accurately understood as living in alignment with your essential nature. Not virtue in the moral sense of being good. Virtue in the sense of authenticity. An apple tree's virtue is producing apples, not oranges. Its power comes from being utterly itself. Rachel realized she'd spent 15 years trying to be a successful corporate finance professional when her essential nature was actually that of an artist. She'd been using all her life force to perform being someone else. The shift didn't happen overnight. She didn't quit her job impulsively, but she started carving out time, even just 30 minutes a day, to paint. Not to become a professional artist, not to sell anything, just to paint because painting made her feel like herself. She said it was like taking off armor she'd worn so long she'd forgotten it wasn't her skin. Within 6 months, she told me that small daily act of honoring her true nature had changed everything. Not because she was painting masterpieces, because she'd stopped betraying herself, and that alignment, that authenticity, created space for joy to return. This is crucial. The Taoist path isn't about achieving anything. It's about releasing what's false. It's subtractive, not additive. You don't become joyful by adding more to your already overwhelming life. You become joyful by peeling away the layers that are suffocating your original nature. Now I want to address something you might be thinking. This sounds nice, but I have real responsibilities. I can't just be authentic and spontaneous. I have bills to pay. People depend on me. The world doesn't work that way. And you're right, partially. But here's the subtle distinction the Taoists make. Wu Wei doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing without forcing, without that quality of grim determination that makes everything feel like pushing a boulder uphill. It means finding the path of least resistance, the way water finds the path downhill. Think about it this way. When you're trying to remember a word and it won't come, what happens? The harder you try, the more it eludes you. But when you relax and think about something else, suddenly it appears. That's Wu Wei. Not forcing, allowing, creating conditions and then getting out of the way. You can pay your bills and meet your responsibilities without the additional layer of resistance and resentment that drains your joy. The obligations aren't the problem. Your relationship to them is. I'm going to share with you a practice that changed my life. It's based on the Taoist principle of observing without judging. For the next 3 days, I want you to notice every time you categorize an experience as good or bad. Just notice. You don't have to change anything. Just develop awareness of how constantly your mind is evaluating, labeling, judging. Notice how much energy this takes. Notice how it pulls you out of the experience itself and into a mental commentary about the experience. Notice how rare it is to simply be with what's happening without immediately deciding whether it should be happening. After 3 days of just noticing, start experimenting with suspending judgment for short periods. When something happens, instead of immediately labeling it, try saying the farmer's maybe. See if you can hold that open, undefined space for even 10 seconds before your mind rushes in with its verdict. This isn't about becoming indifferent or passive. It's about reclaiming the tremendous energy you spend judging and making it available for actually living. Here's another practice from my own journey. The Taoists speak of returning to stillness, to the quiet center that exists beneath all the noise. Once a day, for just 5 minutes, sit in a place where you won't be disturbed. Set a timer so you don't have to track time. Close your eyes, and instead of trying to stop thinking, which is impossible and creates another form of striving, just notice your breath. Count 3 breaths in and 3 breaths out. When your mind wanders into planning or worrying or remembering, don't judge it. Just gently bring your attention back to counting breath. 1, 2, 3 in. 1, 2, 3 out. This isn't meditation in any formal sense. It's not about achieving enlightenment. It's simply about touching that place of stillness that exists underneath all your roles, all your stories, all your striving. That place where nothing is lacking, where you don't have to be anyone or do anything, where you can rest in your original nature. 5 minutes, that's all. But do it every day for 30 days, and I promise you something will shift. The ancient Taoist text, called the Zhuangzi, tells the story of a butcher named Ding, who could carve an entire ox so skillfully that his blade never needed sharpening. When asked his secret, he explained that other butchers see the ox and hack at it, working hard, fighting the bone and muscle. But he had practiced so long that he no longer saw the ox. He saw the spaces between. He saw where the joints naturally separated. His knife followed these natural openings, and the ox fell apart as if it had carved itself. No effort, no force. Perfect efficiency through perfect alignment with the way things actually are. This is the secret to restoring joy. Stop hacking at your life. Stop forcing things to be other than they are. Start looking for the natural openings, the path of least resistance, the way your unique nature wants to express itself. Your joy isn't missing. It's just buried under layers of should, ought to, have to, and supposed to, under conditioning and comparison, and the exhausting performance of being acceptable. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to be acceptable and started being authentic? I don't mean in some dramatic burn-it-all-down way. I mean in small daily ways. What if you said no to things that drain you, even when saying yes would be easier socially? What if you said yes to small things that call to you, even when they seem pointless or unproductive? What if you stopped checking to see if your experience is the right experience and just let yourself have the experience you're having? The Dao De Jing says, to know you have enough is to be rich, not to have everything you want, to know you have enough. Can you feel the difference? One is about accumulation, acquisition, always reaching for more. The other is about recognition, about seeing clearly what's already here. You have been taught that joy comes from getting what you want. But the Taoists understood that joy comes from wanting what you have, not in some fake paste on a smile way, but in the sense of really seeing the gift of existence itself, the astonishing fact that you are here, alive, capable of experiencing the texture of reality. I want to give you one more story, this one from my current life. Last week I was walking to my car after a long, frustrating day. Nothing had gone as planned. I felt behind, inadequate, joyless, and then I saw a tree. I'd probably passed this tree 100 times without seeing it. But in that moment, the late afternoon light was hitting it at a perfect angle, and the leaves were this impossible bright green, almost luminous. And for reasons I can't explain, I stopped and really looked at it. For maybe 30 seconds, I wasn't a person with problems. I wasn't behind or ahead. I was just awareness experiencing green leaves and golden light. And something in my chest loosened. A small door opened. That's what I want you to understand. Joy isn't elsewhere. It's not in some imagined future where everything finally works out. It's in tiny moments of presence that we usually rush past in our urgency to get somewhere better. The Taoists knew this. That's why they painted bamboo and wrote poetry about the moon. Not because these things solve their problems, but because they understood that being fully present to the miracle of existence, even for a moment, is the secret to a joyful life. So here's what I'm inviting you to do. Not asking, not demanding, just inviting, because the Tao cannot be forced. For the next 7 days, commit to these 3 practices. First, create 1 hour of purposeless time each day. No agenda, no improvement project, just space for being. Second, practice the farmer's maybe, at least 5 times a day when your mind rushes to judge an experience. And third, take 5 minutes of stillness, just counting breath. These practices aren't impressive. They won't make good social media posts. They won't earn you money or status, but they will carve out tiny spaces where your original nature can breathe. And in those spaces, joy doesn't have to be pursued. It arises naturally, like spring water from the ground when you stop blocking its source. The ancient Taoists understood something we've forgotten, that life isn't a problem to be solved, it's a mystery to be experienced, that you are not broken, that nothing is lacking, that your essential nature, underneath all the conditioning and fear and exhaustion, is already whole, already enough, already home. The numbness you feel, the joylessness, isn't a mistake. It's a messenger. It's your deeper wisdom trying to get your attention, trying to tell you that the way you're living isn't aligned with who you actually are, that you've been trying to force yourself into a shape that's too small, that you've been chasing joy in directions it doesn't exist. And that invitation, to return to your original nature, to put down what you're carrying, to stop the exhausting fight against what is, that invitation is always open, right now, this moment, not someday when you're more ready or more worthy, now. So I'll leave you with the words of Laozi. Care about what other people think, and you will be their prisoner. You have been imprisoned by accumulated judgments, by learned desires, by the weight of trying to be someone you're not. But the door has never been locked. You can walk out any time, not into some perfect life where everything goes your way, into the perfect freedom of accepting this life exactly as it is, and discovering that in that acceptance, in that release of resistance, joy was waiting all along. Try the practices. Come back in 7 days and share what you noticed, not what you achieved, what you noticed. Because noticing is where transformation begins. And transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming finally, utterly yourself.